To conclude our review of the appendicular division of the skeleton, we'll now look at the bones belonging to the lower limbs. So the lower limbs function to carry the entire weight of the body, and they're anatomically divided into three regions. We have the thigh, the leg, and the foot. So we'll begin with the bones of the thigh, and we'll work our way distally from there. So the bone that occupies the thigh is the femur bone, and the thigh is anatomically referring to the region that's between the hip and the knee joint. So the femur is the longest, the largest, and the strongest bone in the human skeleton. It is approximately 25% of a person's height. So at the proximal end of the femur, we have the head of the femur, which forms the hip joint with the coxal bones. At the distal end, we have the medial and lateral condyles, which are actually not visible from the anterior view on the left side of this diagram here. On the right side of the diagram, we see the posterior view, and we can more easily see the medial and lateral condyles of the femur. And it's these medial and lateral condyles that form the knee joint along with the tibia bone at the distal end of the femur. We also have another bone, the patella, which rests on a small indentation called the patellar surface that's located on the anterior side of the femur bone. So if we turn the femur medially and we look at the head of the femur, we see this small indentation called the fovea capitis. And the fovea capitis is the site of attachment for a ligament that helps secure the head of the femur to the acetabulum of the hip bone. There's also a small artery that's called the obturator artery that enters the femur through the fovea capitis, and that artery is supported by the ligament that is there. Again, looking at the proximal end of the femur, we see just a little bit distally located from the head of the femur, in very close proximity to the hip joint, are these large roughened projections that are called the trochanters. And the trochanters are the attachment points for the gluteal muscles on the femur. Now, the gluteal muscles are very strong postural muscles that help us to stay standing upright. And because of the very large size of the gluteal muscles and the very strong forces that those gluteal muscles exert on the femur, which help to stabilize the hip joint, help keep us upright when we're standing, we notice that the trochanters are very thick bony projections that help to resist the strong pulling forces of those large gluteal muscles. So the trochanters are a really good example of Wolff's Law in the skeleton. Moving distally from the femur, we see the small kind of triangular shaped patella bone. This is a sesamoid bone, so that it is a short bone that develops within a tendon that crosses the anterior part of the kneecap. It develops because it is a sesamoid bone, and all sesamoid bones are short bones that develop within tendons. The patella specifically develops from a set of tendons of the quadriceps femoris muscle group, which is a large four-piece muscle group that exists on the anterior part of the thigh, and it crosses the anterior part of the knee joint. And the patella itself rests on the smooth patellar surface that we see on the anterior part of the distal end of the femur. So the patella helps to protect the anterior part of the knee joint, and it also helps to improve the leverage of the quadriceps femoris muscle group that act on the tibia. And when this muscle group contracts, it actually extends the knee joint to extend the leg outward. And so the patella not only protects the anterior part of the knee, but it helps to provide and improve leverage for those quadriceps femoris muscles that cross the knee joint. Moving more distally, we'll take a look at the bones of the leg. So we're going to be referring to the bones that are located between the knee joint and the ankle joint. There are two bones in parallel here. The lateral bone is referred to as the fibula, and the medial bone is referred to as the tibia. So we see two bones in parallel in much kind of the same fashion that we saw two parallel bones in the antebrachium or the forearm. The tibia is the bone that carries the weight of the body from the femur, so that is both the medial and lateral condyles of the femur rest on that tibia and transmit the body's weight through the tibia down to the ankle joint. So the tibia is located more medially while the fibula is located more laterally. And you'll notice that the fibula is much thinner and not as robust as the tibia, and that's because the fibula doesn't carry any body weight. That is, it receives no body weight from the femur itself. Instead, the fibula acts as a site of muscle attachment, particularly for muscles, not just within the leg, but also for muscles that act on the foot as well. So showing a slightly different diagram here of both the femur and the tibia, we can see that the femur is transmitting all of its weight to the tibia, but it transmits none of that body weight to the fibula. Now, there are small ligaments and things like that connect the fibula to the femur, but those ligaments don't serve to transmit any of the weight of the body that the femur is putting on the tibia. So those ligaments are more for stabilization of the knee joint and stabilization of the fibula at its attachment point with the tibia. And last but not least, we have the region that is referred to as the foot. And the foot is constructed from bones that are located in three major regions. The ankle bones, which are highlighted in red here, and those are collectively called the tarsals. We have the bones of the sole of the foot, which are highlighted in light blue here, that are collectively called the metatarsals. And then finally the bones of the toes that are located at the very distal end of the foot, that are collectively called the phalanges. So we see that the foot has really the same basic arrangement as the hand does, and in place of the thumb we have the hallux, which is the term that we're going to use for the big toe. And the hallux is the first digit of the foot. So in counting the digits of the feet, we will begin with the hallux, which is number 1. Returning back to the tarsal bones here, there are 7 tarsal bones in each ankle, and you can see that they are in a bit different configuration compared to the wrist. The wrist, we saw 2 rows of 4 bones, whereas in the tarsal bones, we see 7 bones that are roughly arranged in kind of a reverse triangular shape, with the point of the triangle at the heel and the base of the triangle at the attachment point with the metatarsals there. Each tarsal bone, just like each carpal bone, has a unique name, but we will only focus on 2 of these bones here. The first of those is the calcaneus, which is highlighted in green here and shown in this diagram in the lower left here. The calcaneus is the heel bone. The second bone is the talus, which is highlighted in blue here. And the talus is the tarsal bone that forms the ankle joint along with the tibia and the fibula. So even though the fibula doesn't carry any body weight from the femur, it still makes an attachment point with the talus to form the ankle joint. The metatarsals, much like the metacarpals in the wrist, or in the hand, do not have very specific names or special names. They are all numbered. So we have metatarsal 1, metatarsal 2, metatarsal 3, metatarsal 4, and metatarsal 5. So you can see just like the bones of the palm, they're given Roman numerals instead of Arabic numerals, and the numbering begins with the metatarsal that's connected to the hallux, or the big toe. So this metatarsal here at the base of the hallux would be the first metatarsal, all the way down to the 5th metatarsal. The phalanges, in much the same way that the phalanges are named in the hand, we see the same naming scheme adopted for the toes as well, or the phalanges of the foot. So let's go through some example naming of the phalanges of the foot here. So starting with the first phalanx, or the first set of phalanges, which belong to the hallux, or the big toe, we see that there are 2 bones in the big toe. We have one at the distal end, which is called distal phalanx 1, and we have another one that is connected to the first metatarsal here, which is called proximal phalanx 1. So just like the thumb, the big toe only has 2 bones within it, while all of the other remaining digits, that is all of the remaining fingers other than the thumb, and all of the remaining toes other than the big toe, or the hallux, have 3 phalanges, or 3 phalanxes, that belong to them. So an example naming scheme for this For this second digit here, we have distal phalanx 2, that's located at the very tip of the second digit. We have middle phalanx 2, that's the middle bone located within that second phalange. And we have proximal phalanx 2, which is connected to the second metatarsal. And the naming and numbering continues from there all the way down to the fifth digit that connects to the fifth metatarsal. So the bone in the middle of that fifth digit there would be called middle phalanx 5. The bone at the tip of the fifth digit would be distal phalanx 5. And the bone that connects to the fifth metatarsal is going to be proximal phalanx 5.